What if the only thing standing between you and the life you've always wanted is the simple decision to believe before you can see? Most people spend their entire lives waiting for proof. They wait for the opportunity before they feel confident, wait for success before they feel worthy, and wait for change before they allow themselves to hope. But what if the order has always been reversed? What if reality is not asking you to see first and believe later, but to believe first and watch everything else fall into place? The greatest creators in history understood that every visible achievement begins as an invisible conviction. The moment you stop letting your circumstances define your faith and start letting your faith define your circumstances, you unlock a completely different way of living. Stay with this message until the end, because the principle you're about to discover could transform not only the way you think, but the way you experience every moment of your life. Everything you experience in life begins long before it becomes visible. Before a building rises into the sky, it exists as an idea in the architect's imagination. Before a song is ever heard, it is first composed in silence. Before a tree spreads its branches toward the sun, it begins as a tiny seed hidden beneath the earth where no one can see it. In much the same way, every change in your life starts as an invisible assumption held within your own consciousness. The outer world is often the final chapter of a story that was written internally long before it appeared. Most people believe that their circumstances determine their thoughts, but the opposite is often true. The assumptions you repeatedly accept about yourself quietly shape the way you interpret every experience. If you assume that life is always working against you, your attention naturally searches for proof of that belief. You notice every setback while overlooking every opportunity. If you assume that growth, abundance, and possibility are available to you, your mind begins noticing doors that were always there but previously ignored. The world itself may not have changed overnight, but your perception of it certainly has. An assumption is more than a passing thought. It is an idea you have accepted so completely that it feels natural. You no longer question it because it has become part of your identity. For example, someone who assumes they are confident behaves differently without even thinking about it. They speak with certainty, make decisions more easily, and recover from mistakes more quickly. Their confidence is not something they constantly try to create, it is something they already believe to be true. Likewise, someone who assumes they are incapable may hesitate before every opportunity, even when success is within reach. Their assumption silently directs their actions. This is why invisible assumptions are so powerful. They operate beneath conscious awareness, influencing countless decisions every single day. They determine how you react to criticism, how you approach challenges, and how you define your own potential. They become the lens through which every experience is filtered. When an assumption remains unchanged for years, it begins creating predictable patterns in your life that seem like fate, but are often the natural result of repeated internal beliefs. Many people unknowingly build their assumptions from past experiences rather than future possibilities. A single failure becomes the foundation for believing they will always fail. One disappointment becomes evidence that happiness is out of reach. One rejection becomes proof that they are unworthy of acceptance. These conclusions may feel reasonable because they are based on memory, but they often imprison a person inside yesterday's experiences. The past begins writing the script for the future, and the cycle continues simply because the assumption has never been questioned. The remarkable truth is that assumptions can be changed. You are not required to keep believing what you once believed. The invisible foundation of your life is not fixed, it can be rebuilt. The moment you consciously choose a different assumption, you begin creating a different direction for your thoughts, emotions, and actions. At first, the new assumption may feel unfamiliar because it has not yet been repeated enough to become natural. But every time you return to it, you strengthen it. Gradually, what once felt impossible begins feeling believable, and what becomes believable eventually begins influencing behavior. Imagine someone who has always believed they are unlucky deciding instead to assume that opportunities naturally find them. At first, nothing around them may appear different. Yet, because their attention has shifted, they begin noticing invitations they would have ignored before. They speak more openly, take more initiative, and approach situations with greater optimism. Their assumption quietly changes their participation in life, and their participation changes the results they experience. What looked like luck from the outside was actually the consequence of a new inner foundation. Invisible assumptions also shape emotional experience. A person who assumes the future is filled with uncertainty, often lives with constant anxiety, while someone who assumes life is unfolding in meaningful ways experiences greater peace even during difficulty. The events themselves may be similar, but the emotional reality differs because of the assumption beneath them. In this way, assumptions are not only creating future outcomes, they are creating present experiences. The challenge is that people often wait for external proof before changing their assumptions. They say, once I succeed, I'll believe in myself, or once things improve, I'll become optimistic. But if assumptions truly shape perception and action, then waiting for proof delays the very change they seek. A new assumption must be accepted internally before its effects can fully emerge externally. It is like changing the direction of a ship before expecting the scenery to change. The turn happens first beneath your feet, while the horizon shifts gradually afterward. Every reality you now experience was once invisible. It existed first as a thought repeated often enough to become belief, then as a belief practiced long enough to become identity, and finally as an identity expressed consistently enough to shape experience. The same process can work in your favor the moment you consciously choose what to assume. You are not merely reacting to life. You are participating in the quiet creation of it every day through the ideas you accept as true. The invisible assumptions you carry are constantly influencing the visible world you inhabit. Change the assumptions, and you begin changing the direction of your life. Nurture thoughts that align with possibility rather than limitation, growth rather than fear, and fulfillment rather than lack. Over time, those invisible seeds will produce visible fruit, proving that every lasting transformation begins not with what the eyes can see, but with what the mind has first accepted as true. One of the greatest obstacles to transformation is the habit of waiting. People wait for the perfect opportunity before they take action. Wait for confidence before they believe in themselves. Wait for success before they feel successful. And wait for visible proof before they allow hope to take root. They unknowingly hand over the authority for their inner world to external circumstances, believing that life must change first before they can change. But true transformation begins when you reverse that pattern. The moment you stop waiting for evidence and decide to become the evidence yourself, you step into a completely different way of living. Most people are conditioned to believe only what they can see. From an early age, they are taught to trust appearances and let circumstances define their expectations. If the bank account is low, they feel poor. If they receive criticism, they feel inadequate. If obstacles appear, they conclude that failure is inevitable. Their emotional state rises and falls according to external events. Yet this creates a cycle where life is always leading and the individual is always following. Instead of consciously directing their experience, they become passengers reacting to whatever happens next. To become the evidence means refusing to let present conditions decide who you are. It means embodying the qualities of the person you aspire to become before the world has fully recognized them. A person who wishes to live with confidence begins carrying themselves with confidence now. Someone who desires peace begins practicing peace even when situations are uncertain. A person who seeks abundance begins thinking and acting with gratitude and generosity rather than constantly focusing on scarcity. In every case, the transformation starts internally long before it becomes externally visible. This is not about pretending or ignoring reality. It is about understanding that your internal identity shapes the way you interact with reality. If you believe you are capable, you naturally approach challenges with greater determination. If you believe you deserve meaningful relationships, you communicate with openness instead of fear. If you believe opportunities exist for you, you become more willing to notice and pursue them. The outer world responds differently because you are no longer approaching it from the same old assumptions. Imagine an actor preparing for a role. Before stepping onto the stage, they immerse themselves in the character's thoughts, emotions, and behavior. They do not wait until the audience believes them before they embody the role. They embody it first. In many ways, life works similarly. You begin living from the identity you have chosen, and through repeated expression, that identity becomes increasingly natural. Eventually, what once required conscious effort feels effortless, because it has become part of who you are. Many people believe that confidence comes after achievement, but often confidence grows through consistent action before achievement arrives. The entrepreneur who starts a business does not wait until the company succeeds to think like a leader. The artist does not wait until the masterpiece is complete before identifying as a creator. The individual committed to growth begins acting from their future identity long before external recognition appears. Their behavior becomes evidence of their belief, and over time, the results begin reflecting that consistency. Waiting for evidence can also trap you in endless comparison. You look at other people's progress and conclude that your own vision is unrealistic because it has not yet materialized. But comparison shifts attention away from your own inner development and toward external measurements that are constantly changing. Becoming the evidence requires looking inward rather than outward. It means asking, am I living today as the person I intend to become? Instead of, has the world confirmed it yet? This shift restores your focus to what you can actually influence. The process of becoming the evidence is built through small daily choices. It is found in the conversations you have with yourself when no one else is listening. It appears in the habits you maintain when motivation fades. It is expressed in the gratitude you practice before results arrive and the persistence you demonstrate when circumstances seem unchanged. Every moment you choose alignment over doubt, you strengthen the identity you are creating. As your internal consistency grows, something remarkable begins to happen. Your actions become more intentional, your decisions become clearer, and your emotional reactions become steadier. People may notice a difference in your presence even before they see a difference in your achievements. You carry yourself with a quiet certainty that does not depend on constant validation. This confidence is not arrogance. It is the natural outcome of someone who has stopped asking the world for permission to believe in themselves. Eventually, the external evidence begins to appear. Opportunities arise that once seemed impossible. Relationships improve because you approach them differently. Goals that once felt distant begin moving within reach. To others, these changes may seem sudden or even fortunate, but you know they were quietly developing long before anyone could see them. The visible transformation is simply catching up to the invisible one that has already taken place within you. The greatest shift occurs when you realize that you no longer need external proof to sustain your belief. Your identity is no longer dependent on temporary conditions because it has become rooted in something deeper. You understand that circumstances change, but the state you choose to inhabit can remain steady. You stop chasing validation and start living from conviction. You stop waiting for life to prove your worth and begin expressing your worth through the way you think, speak, and act every day. In the end, becoming the evidence is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. It means choosing to embody the future before it becomes visible, trusting your inner direction more than temporary appearances, and allowing your actions to reflect the person you are becoming rather than the circumstances you are leaving behind. When you live this way, reality no longer feels like something you are chasing. Instead, it gradually becomes a mirror reflecting the identity you have already accepted within yourself. One of the most fascinating abilities of the human mind is its power to respond to vividly imagined experiences almost as if they were real. A memory can make your heart race years after the event has passed. A dream can leave you emotional even after you wake up. Simply imagining biting into a lemon can make your mouth water, while recalling an embarrassing moment can instantly recreate the same uncomfortable feelings. These everyday examples reveal an important truth. When imagination is experienced with enough emotion and repetition, the mind begins treating it as something significant. It becomes part of your internal world, influencing how you think, feel, and behave long before anything changes externally. This is why imagination is far more than entertainment or fantasy. It is a rehearsal space where identity is quietly formed. Every time you repeatedly picture yourself as incapable, rejected, or unsuccessful, your mind becomes increasingly familiar with that version of you. It starts accepting those images as normal, and your actions begin aligning with them without conscious effort. On the other hand, when you consistently imagine yourself as confident, peaceful, capable, or fulfilled, you are introducing your mind to a different identity. With enough repetition and emotional involvement, that identity begins to feel natural, influencing the decisions you make and the opportunities you are willing to pursue. Most people underestimate the effect of the pictures they hold in their minds every day. They may spend hours imagining worst case scenarios without realizing they are rehearsing fear. They mentally replay old failures until disappointment becomes part of their self-concept. They visualize rejection before speaking, failure before trying, and loss before trusting. These imagined experiences create emotional responses that shape behavior just as powerfully as real events. The body reacts with tension, hesitation, and avoidance because the mind has already accepted the imagined outcome as something worth preparing for. Now imagine using that same mental ability in a different direction. Instead of rehearsing defeat, you begin rehearsing success. Instead of imagining obstacles, you picture yourself calmly overcoming them. You mentally experience gratitude before the blessing arrives, confidence before the opportunity appears, and fulfillment before external confirmation exists. Over time, these repeated inner experiences begin influencing your emotional baseline. You stop feeling like an outsider looking at possibility and start feeling like someone who naturally belongs within it. The key is not merely visualizing images, but feeling them as though they carry personal meaning. Emotion is what gives imagination its power. A vague thought quickly disappears, but a deeply felt mental experience leaves an imprint on the mind. When you imagine with conviction, your nervous system responds. Your posture shifts, your breathing changes, and your internal state adjusts to match the experience you are creating. This emotional participation makes the imagined scenario increasingly familiar until it begins shaping your expectations in everyday life. Consider how athletes often mentally rehearse competitions before stepping onto the field. Musicians visualize performances before standing before an audience. Speakers imagine delivering their message before they ever approach the stage. These practices are not accidental. Mental rehearsal prepares the mind to act with greater confidence when the real moment arrives. By repeatedly experiencing success internally, they reduce uncertainty and create familiarity. What was once intimidating begins to feel manageable because it has already been lived through in the imagination. The same principle applies far beyond performance. The person who consistently imagines themselves as worthy begins carrying themselves differently in relationships. The individual who imagines abundance becomes more willing to recognize opportunities instead of dwelling on scarcity. The one who imagines peace approaches conflict with greater patience and emotional balance. Their outer behavior changes because their inner experience has already shifted. They are no longer reacting solely to the present moment, but expressing the identity they have been cultivating within. Of course, imagination alone is not a substitute for action. Rather, it becomes the foundation from which meaningful action emerges. When your mind repeatedly experiences confidence, your decisions become bolder. When it repeatedly experiences possibility, your attention naturally notices paths forward instead of barriers. Imagination does not eliminate effort. It transforms the quality of the effort by changing the mindset from which it arises. Instead of acting from fear, you begin acting from expectation. One of the greatest mistakes people make is assuming that only physical experiences shape identity. In reality, the conversations, images, and emotions you repeatedly entertain internally become part of the story you believe about yourself. If that story is filled with limitation, your behavior will often confirm it. But if that story is built around growth, resilience, and fulfillment, your actions gradually align with that version of yourself instead. The mind adapts to what it experiences most consistently, whether those experiences occur in the external world or within your own imagination. This is why protecting your inner world is so important. Every mental rehearsal is quietly teaching your mind what to expect from life. Every vivid scene you revisit strengthens a particular emotional pattern. Every repeated image becomes another brushstroke painting the portrait of who you believe yourself to be. Over time, these inner experiences influence your confidence, your habits, your relationships, and your willingness to pursue opportunities that once felt out of reach. Ultimately, the mind responds to deeply felt imagination because it is designed to learn through experience, whether physical or internal. The images you nurture today become the expectations you carry tomorrow, and those expectations influence the choices that shape your future. When you intentionally imagine yourself living with purpose, confidence, peace, and fulfillment, you are not escaping reality. You are preparing yourself to participate in it differently. Little by little, the person you repeatedly experience within becomes the person you naturally express without. And as your inner world changes, the outer world begins reflecting the transformation that first took place in the quiet theater of your own mind. One of the greatest challenges on the path to transformation is learning to remain faithful to your inner conviction when the outer world seems to disagree. It is easy to believe when everything is going well. It is easy to stay positive when opportunities appear, relationships flourish, and life unfolds according to your expectations. But the true strength of belief is revealed when circumstances temporarily contradict your vision. In those moments, you face a choice: Allow appearances to redefine your faith, or allow your faith to rise above appearances. The people who experience lasting change are often the ones who understand that temporary circumstances do not have the final word. Most people unknowingly give too much authority to the present moment. They look at today's challenges and assume they are permanent. A setback becomes proof that success is impossible. A delay becomes evidence that nothing is happening. A closed door convinces them that every future opportunity is also closed. They forget that circumstances are constantly changing and that what exists today may be completely different tomorrow. Yet, because they react emotionally to every obstacle, they repeatedly abandon the beliefs that could have carried them through. Persistence in belief does not mean stubbornly ignoring reality or pretending problems do not exist. It means refusing to let temporary situations determine your permanent identity. You can acknowledge difficulty without surrendering your vision. You can recognize uncertainty without accepting defeat. The difference lies in where you choose to place your attention. If your attention remains fixed on obstacles, they grow larger in your perception. If your attention remains fixed on possibility, your mind continues searching for ways forward, even when the path is not immediately visible. Think of a sailor crossing the ocean. Storms may arise, waves may become violent, and visibility may disappear for a time. Yet the sailor does not abandon the destination simply because the weather changes. The course remains the same even while conditions fluctuate. In the same way, persistence in belief means keeping your inner direction steady while allowing external circumstances to pass like changing weather. The storm is temporary, but the destination remains. One reason persistence is so powerful is that belief shapes interpretation. Two people may experience the same obstacle, but one sees it as failure while the other sees it as preparation. One concludes that the journey is over, while the other views the challenge as part of the journey itself. Their circumstances are identical, but their beliefs create completely different emotional experiences. The one who persists remains open to learning, adapting, and continuing forward. The one who abandons belief often stops before the opportunity to succeed has fully arrived. Life rarely unfolds in a perfectly straight line. Progress often comes with pauses, unexpected turns, and moments that appear confusing while you are living through them. Many of the greatest breakthroughs are preceded by periods where nothing seems to be happening. During these quiet seasons, persistence becomes the invisible bridge between vision and realization. You continue nurturing your chosen belief not because you have immediate proof, but because you understand that inner consistency eventually shapes outer movement. Another important aspect of persistence is emotional discipline. The human mind naturally wants reassurance. It wants evidence that every effort is producing visible results. But emotional maturity develops when you learn to remain grounded without constant confirmation. You stop depending on external validation to sustain your confidence. Instead, your confidence grows from within. This inner stability allows you to navigate uncertainty with patience rather than panic, and expectation rather than fear. Persistence also transforms the way you act. A person who believes their future is filled with possibility continues preparing even when results are delayed. They keep learning, improving, and showing up because their belief supports their effort. Meanwhile, someone who has surrendered to doubt often stops, taking the very actions that could create change. The difference is not always talent or intelligence. It is often the willingness to continue believing when circumstances have not yet provided encouragement. Over time, this persistence creates momentum. Every day you maintain your inner conviction strengthens your identity. Every moment you choose hope over fear reinforces a different way of thinking. Eventually, your actions, habits, and decisions become aligned with the belief you have consistently practiced. What once felt uncertain begins feeling natural because your mind has accepted it as part of who you are. The external world then starts reflecting this internal stability through opportunities, relationships, and experiences that match your new perspective. There will always be moments when appearances tempt you to abandon your vision. You may encounter setbacks that seem impossible to explain or delays that test your patience. Yet these moments do not define your future unless you allow them to define your belief. The temporary has power only when it convinces you to surrender the permanent direction you have chosen within yourself. If you remain steady, circumstances eventually lose their ability to control your emotional state. The remarkable truth is that persistence in belief often changes you long before it changes your environment. You become calmer in uncertainty, stronger in difficulty, and more focused despite distractions. You begin trusting your inner direction rather than every external opinion. This personal transformation is itself a powerful success because it creates a foundation that cannot easily be shaken by changing conditions. In the end, temporary circumstances are exactly that, temporary. They rise and fall like waves, while your inner conviction can remain constant if you choose to protect it. When you continue believing despite appearances, you stop living as someone controlled by the present moment and start living as someone guided by a deeper vision. The world around you may take time to catch up, but your persistence ensures that your future is no longer dictated by passing conditions. Instead, it is shaped by the belief you faithfully carry through every season until reality finally reflects what you refuse to abandon within. The most powerful force shaping your life is not found in your circumstances, your background, or even your temporary thoughts. It is found in the identity you consistently accept as your own. Every day, whether consciously or unconsciously, you are answering one silent question: who am I? The answer to that question influences your decisions, your emotions, your expectations, and your actions. Over time, the world around you begins to reflect that answer back to you. This is why reality so often mirrors the person you consistently believe yourself to be. Your life becomes an expression of your dominant self-concept. Many people try to change their lives by changing isolated behaviors while leaving their identity untouched. They attempt to become successful while secretly believing they are destined to fail. They seek meaningful relationships while quietly feeling unworthy of love. They pursue abundance while internally identifying with scarcity. This creates conflict because actions are being pulled in one direction while identity is pulling in another. Eventually, the deeper belief wins and the person returns to familiar patterns. Lasting transformation does not begin with behavior alone. It begins with becoming someone new within. Identity is formed through repetition. The thoughts you entertain most often, the stories you tell about yourself, and the emotions you repeatedly accept gradually become your internal truth. If every challenge reinforces the belief that you are weak, you begin living as though weakness defines you. If every setback strengthens the belief that you are resilient and capable of learning, you begin approaching life with courage instead of fear. The same event can either imprison your identity or expand it depending on the meaning you assign to it. Imagine two people who both experience rejection. One believes, "This proves I'm not good enough," and carries that belief into future opportunities. The other believes, "This is one experience, not my identity," and continues moving forward with confidence. Over time, their lives begin to diverge dramatically. The first person hesitates, avoids risks, and unconsciously confirms the identity they have accepted. The second remains open, persistent, and willing to grow, creating opportunities that reinforce a different self-image. The event was the same, but the identity each person chose determined the future that followed. The person you believe yourself to be quietly influences countless daily decisions. Someone who identifies as healthy naturally makes choices that support well-being. Someone who identifies as disciplined finds it easier to remain consistent. Someone who believes they are creative looks for ways to express imagination instead of assuming they lack talent. These actions often appear effortless because they are aligned with identity rather than forced through willpower. When behavior flows from self-concept, consistency becomes much easier to maintain. One reason change feels difficult is because people often try to act against the identity they have practiced for years. If you have repeatedly told yourself that you are unlucky, invisible, or incapable, those ideas become deeply familiar. Even when evidence suggests otherwise, the mind tends to return to what it already accepts as normal. This is why creating a new identity requires persistence. It is not enough to think differently once. You must repeatedly return to the version of yourself you wish to become until it feels more natural than the old story. This process is strengthened through imagination, self-talk, and daily choices. Every time you picture yourself handling challenges with confidence, you reinforce a new self-image. Every time you speak to yourself with encouragement instead of criticism, you weaken old limitations. Every action taken from your desired identity, no matter how small, becomes evidence that the transformation is already underway. The goal is not perfection but consistency. Each repeated experience gradually reshapes the way you see yourself. As your identity changes, your expectations begin changing as well. You no longer expect failure as the default outcome. You begin expecting growth, meaningful opportunities, supportive relationships, and positive possibilities. These expectations influence where your attention goes. You notice resources instead of only obstacles. You become willing to introduce yourself, apply for opportunities, express ideas, and take steps you once avoided. In many cases, the opportunities were always present, but your previous identity prevented you from recognizing them. The remarkable thing about identity is that other people often respond to it too. Confidence invites trust. Calmness creates stability. Authenticity encourages connection. When you consistently believe in your own value, you naturally communicate differently, and those around you often respond to that change. This is not because you are manipulating anyone, but because your internal state is being expressed through every conversation, decision, and interaction. The world reflects what you repeatedly project. There will still be challenges along the way. Changing identity does not eliminate difficulty, but it transforms your relationship with it. Instead of interpreting setbacks as proof that you should quit, you see them as opportunities to strengthen the person you are becoming. Obstacles become temporary experiences rather than permanent labels. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "How would the person I choose to be respond right now?" That single shift can alter the direction of your entire life. Eventually, the outer world catches up with the inner transformation. The habits you maintain, the confidence you carry, the opportunities you pursue, and the relationships you build all begin reflecting the identity you have consistently practiced. What once felt impossible becomes familiar. What once required effort becomes natural. Others may call it luck or coincidence, but you recognize it as the quiet result of changing yourself from within. In the end, reality mirrors the person you consistently believe yourself to be, because your identity influences everything that follows. It shapes perception, guides action, affects emotion, and determines persistence. When you consciously choose a new self-concept and remain faithful to it day after day. You are not merely hoping for a different future. You are becoming the very person capable of living it. And as you continue to embody that identity with conviction and consistency, the life around you gradually transforms into a reflection of the truth you have accepted within yourself. At the end of the day, the world you experience is deeply connected to the story you choose to believe about yourself and your future. If you continue waiting for reality to give you permission to believe, you may spend years chasing confirmation that never arrives. But when you make the courageous decision to believe first, to think, feel, and live from the version of yourself that already possesses what you seek, you begin changing from the inside out. Your perception becomes clearer, your actions become more confident, and your expectations begin attracting possibilities that once seemed invisible. The outer world may take time to reflect the shift, but the transformation has already begun the moment your inner conviction becomes stronger than your external doubt. Hold your vision. Protect your belief. Remain faithful to the future you have accepted within. Because when you refuse to abandon your inner certainty, reality has no choice but to eventually catch up. Thank you for spending this time with me and allowing these ideas to become part of your journey. If this message touched your heart or inspired a new way of thinking, don't let it end here. Carry it with you into tomorrow, into your quiet moments, and into every decision you make. Remember that every lasting transformation begins with a belief that refuses to be shaken by appearances. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs this reminder today. And before you leave, take one moment to close your eyes and imagine the life you truly desire, not as a distant dream, but as a present reality already alive within you. Keep believing, keep persisting, and keep becoming the person you were always meant to be. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next